Cities are home to more than half of the people living on our planet today. These urban centers face a host of pressures, from the demands on infrastructure by growing populations to the risks of climate change. On Eco India today, we discover solutions to enhance the quality of life in our changing cities. Hello and welcome, I'm Sanuta Raghu. The oasis I'm standing in belies the reality around me. Mumbai is one of the many cities that's seen unprecedented growth, accompanied by a building boom. Cement has long shaped our built environment, but it has an enormous carbon footprint. In search of green alternatives, two engineers in Tamil Nadu are rescuing almost forgotten traditional know-how.
Arriving in Ganapati Palayam, it appears to be a village like any other in India's Tamil Nadu state. The young have all left, only the elderly remain. Custodians of local knowledge, including the ways in which villagers once built their homes.
Have you ever made pot tiles?
I used to watch my father make them.
So your father handcrafted them, used a kiln to make them?
Yes.
Construction engineers Aravind Manoharan and Bharat Balasubramaniam want to tap into this ancient knowledge. They have visited more than 40 villages around Tamil Nadu in recent years, investigating the old techniques and building materials.
There used to be only one or two masons per region. Local people would work together with them. So anyone over 80 knew the entire process, how a mud mixture should be, how to choose the mud, what to add to the lime and its consistency, and about roofing and flooring. We interviewed elderly people in each region and benefited from their knowledge.
77-year-old stone mason K. Natarajan is one of the last of his kind. He is building a house, 650 square meters in area in Velakoil, in the old style. He adds egg white to the lime mix to lend the plaster a satin sheen. In the business for 50 years, he is delighted to share the secrets of traditional construction with a new generation of builders.
All the houses in my village used to be built like this. In the cities, they can't build structures like this. But we had mud walls, lime plaster, and tile roofs. This stopped with the advent of cement.
Aravind Manoharan and Bharat Balasubramaniam have been building with natural materials for the last 3 years. Things like myrobalan nuts or jaggery, a sugar used in construction for centuries to bind lime plaster.
A house should use local materials, local soil, locally sourced inputs. Only then is it a structure that does not impact the environment.
Modern construction methods are amongst the most voracious energy consumers. Every year, global cement production tops 4 billion tons, and manufacturing requires extremely high temperatures. The production of a single ton emits 700 kilograms of carbon dioxide. In addition, toxic chemicals in construction materials pose health hazards. Punitavati T wants to shield her family from all that. She contacted Aravind Manoharan and Bharat Balasubramaniam to build her an old-style holiday home in the countryside.
We wanted a place we could practice organic farming because we wanted to provide good food for our kids. And since we wanted a house to stay in, when we came out here, we thought, why not do that naturally too?
7-year-old twins Venba and Satvikan love to play at their country home in Perundurai. The walls are coated with 5 layers of lime plaster that allow the house to breathe. This natural material keeps the house cool in summer and warm during winter. The wood for the roof was sourced from a reclaimed wood market. Punitavati T and her husband Hemraj are among a growing number of middle-income house owners who have opted for green building materials. Aravind Manoharan's team doesn't just use traditional techniques and materials to build new houses, they come in useful for restoration work too, on properties like this one nearby.
This is a 90-year-old building that we have renovated. The original wall was a mud wall. It was 1.5 feet thick, which they had coated with 7 layers of lime plaster.
Aravind Manoharan and Bharat Balasubramaniam have already completed numerous sustainable projects, mainly in rural areas, including schools. Depending on model and workmanship, building costs are priced at around 3,000 rupees or 35 euros per square meter. By contrast, a conventional house costs less than half that sum. Punitavati T doesn't regret the investment. She believes it's already paying dividends in a cleaner, more sustainable environment for her children.
Now, Bangkok and Berlin may be half a world away, but both face the threat of drowning. Their drainage systems can't cope with flooding caused by climate change. A water management model devised to turn cities into veritable sponges could help both stay dry.
Thailand's capital city, Bangkok, has been hit especially hard by climate change. The city is only 1 meter above sea level, which keeps rising at a rate of 5 millimeters per year. Scientists predict that the city could be underwater by the year 2050. Alex Face is a graffiti artist and parent who's worried about the future of his home. Some stretches of land have already started sinking, for example, around the Samut Chin temple, only 20 kilometers south of Bangkok.
The ocean moved to the land in the last 30 years, so the local people need to move the house.
There was a village and a school here once, but when the area was flooded, residents left and the school was moved inland. The temple is now like an island that, during flooding, is surrounded by the sea.
Yeah, you see the big concrete over here, the dam to try to protect the temple, but it feels like not stable, and it's crazy. It used to be the road here.
Germany recently experienced a climate change-induced disaster. The summer of 2021 saw the worst flooding here in a century. Nearly 200 people were killed and many remain unaccounted for. Damage costs were in the billions. The incredibly dry summers created soil that was so parched it couldn't absorb enough water. But drainage systems are also hitting their limits, like here in Berlin. Heavy rainfall overwhelms the infrastructure, leaving it unable to handle the massive volumes of water. This causes basements, low-lying building entrances, and subway tunnels to flood. Engineer Karin Zieke from Berlin's city water management designed so-called decentralized rainwater management. Like most cities, Berlin has a sewer system, but it can't always cope.
Because heavy rainfall has increased, the wastewater systems can no longer drain that volume of water. And that's when you get overflow and large volumes of surface runoff water that collect in lower lying areas.
To help tackle the problem, Berlin aims to become a sponge city. The idea is to capture rainwater like a sponge.
Then it can be drawn into the soil. That's good for the water supply and has other benefits, like urban greenery and climate. And yes, it helps to prevent flooding.
Since 2017, every new housing development in Berlin has been built according to the sponge concept. A pioneering example is this residential area in southeast Berlin.
Here you can see the vast greenery on the rooftops. That's one way that rainwater is captured, and from there it evaporates.
As much as 90% of rainwater can be captured in this way. Runoff water flows through pipes into special drainage basins. There are also low-lying flower beds, paved areas that are not sealed, and gaps in the curbs that allow water to pass. But only about 4% of Berlin's rooftops have plants like this. The sponge city is still in its early phases. Back in Bangkok, the city also wants to tackle flooding with green rooftops. Like in Berlin, it hopes to use them for temporary water storage so the rainwater can be put to good use. That's just one of many ways to give nature a chance in concrete jungles. More importantly, it's an attempt to prevent catastrophic flooding in the future.
I think we can do that, yeah. But we need everyone, like, hey, wake up and see what's gonna happen, and we need to fix it together.
Cities have a near insatiable appetite for energy. The sun offers huge potential to meet their demands, but solar power storage is still riddled with problems. A team of scientists in Europe says it's developed technology that's cheap, effective, and could ultimately help the world reach its climate goals. We checked out their pilot project in Spain.
Safety first. These engineers are getting ready to scale a steep reactor here in the Spanish city of Seville. It's at the heart of a pilot project that is now in its final phase, one that holds the promise of a new method to store solar energy.
We need to be careful. That's why we switch off the solar field before we go up. The heat up there equals 14 suns. We'd get fried.
Today, Chakartegui is giving his colleague Günther Schumacher a tour. It's the German engineer's first visit to the plant. He's one of the numerous researchers who developed the reactor's components in institutes across Europe. But the pandemic prevented them from traveling to the site to install them. Despite the obstacles, they believe this plant could be a milestone in the quest to store solar power. At the base, calcium carbonate is fed into the reactor, or calciner. The chemical compound consists primarily of limestone. Tests here have shown it can store solar energy. The method is now ready for more extensive trials, though some processes still need to be optimized. Günther Schumacher reports a minor error back to his colleague in Germany. Mohamed Yusha is an expert for thermochemical reactors, but was unable to accompany him on his trip.
There's a power loss. This has to be identified. It took a lot of time to heat up, and we not reached the maximum temperature.
The two engineers helped design the power blocks and the plant's conversion technology. The project is a matter close to Mohamed Yusha's heart. He experienced the severe effects of climate change firsthand in his home country, Bangladesh.
One of the principal reasons I left Bangladesh is because you can't go out anymore. Today, you have nothing but an interminably long summer. The summer does not end in Bangladesh. It only perhaps relents for a few weeks in January, but the winter has disappeared.
A future faced by countries worldwide. It's what's driving Mohamed Yusha and his team to find sustainable storage methods for renewable energy. Funded by the EU, their project has devised a method that relies on a chemical reaction process. Panels send solar energy to the mirrors on top of the reactor. Together, they produce temperatures of up to 950 degrees Celsius. That heat causes the calcium carbonate to break up into calcium oxide and CO2. These components can be stored for a long time and reused for further reaction processes to obtain energy whenever needed.
If we want to develop energy storage systems on a big global scale, we need abundant, stable, non-toxic and affordable materials, and calcium carbonate meets all these requirements.
Currently, it has few competitors. Solar energy accounts for 1/3 of the electricity generated from renewables in the EU. It's the fastest growing source. But when the sunlight vanishes, there are hardly options to make it available at a later time as needed. The most widespread solution is battery storage. In the west of Spain, energy giant Iberdrola uses lithium-ion batteries.
This solar park and its storage system will provide energy to 20,000 homes every year and will avoid the emission of 12,000 tons of CO2.
Adrián Bárez is the site manager and oversaw the park's construction. The installed system stores excess power that can be fed back into the grid when it is needed. The lithium batteries are locked away in these racks. We were not allowed to film them on the inside. Within 3 hours, the batteries are fully charged. The energy is then used over the course of the day at times when there is higher demand or no sun.
These are times of expansion and the discovery of new storage technologies. And technologies are developing at a fast pace. So we'll have more storage systems in the near future and on the market on an industrial level.
The batteries only store power for a limited time, and lithium is also in high demand for other green technologies. Ricardo Chacartegui is convinced that lithium will soon be rendered obsolete by his team's method that uses limestone to store solar power.
Lithium batteries are magnificent. They have great potential, very high performance. But lithium is an extremely limited resource. It can only be found in very few locations in the world.
The engineers hope that their storage method will be trialed at a real plant in the next 3 years. If successful, their innovation could be brought to market.
Storing renewable energy is the most important step in the fight against climate change.
And the clock is ticking. Capturing the power of the sun is said to be a key step on the path to success.
Singapore is warming up faster than the rest of the world, and climate change isn't the only reason. Its densely built environment traps heat, and air conditioning only compounds the problem. The need to keep cool has prompted the city to embrace innovative green solutions.
It's hot and humid in Singapore all year round. Temperatures reach 32 degrees and above daily. And it's a relief to step inside this mall where it's a refreshing 20 degrees. The mall is cooled by the world's largest underground air conditioner, located 25 meters below ground. It's a district cooling network, the second of its kind in Singapore. Down here, water is chilled and piped out to 27 buildings to keep them cool. The sheer size of the plant makes it so efficient.
District cooling can achieve up to 40% in terms of energy savings. This is equivalent to powering 23,000 three-room apartments for a year. So this energy save can also translate into carbon savings, which is a reduction or removing 10,000 cars off Singapore roads every year.
But this is how conventional air conditioning looks like in Singapore. It's a back alley in a historic part of the city with hundreds of air conditioners. Each machine is powered by fossil fuel and releases waste heat into the alleys and out to the city. It's a vicious cycle. With global warming and heat waves, living without air conditioning is tough. But more air conditioners mean more waste heat emitted to the environment. Singapore's founding Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew once declared the air conditioner to be the greatest invention of the 20th century.
Lee Kuan Yew wanted to make Singapore very hospitable and very comfortable for our Euro-American investors. We jokingly call it Little America. And every building here is fully air-conditioned.
What was sacrificed taking Sun Ats was the development of architecture suitable for the local climate.
So when the weather is good, we should be able to open up the building. When the weather is hot and humid, we close it and switch on the aircon. So it's an optional use of air conditioning rather than an absolute necessity. The challenge to tropical architects is how do you design a building like that?
Now, some tropical skyscrapers have been built. This hotel is one example. Ayu Sukma Adelia, an architect from the Cooling Singapore Research Project, explains.
This building uses a vertical greenery that cover almost the entire facade of the building. And by having the vegetation around the building, it can reduce the surface temperature. In fact, in our study, we found out that by having at least 10 meters vertical greenery in front of your buildings, it can reduce the surface temperature by 5 degrees Celsius.
Singapore's newest public housing project, Tengah, is where many solutions come together. With district cooling, partly powered by the sun, electric vehicles charging stations, bicycle lanes, urban farms, and rooftop gardens. This is a look into what Singapore could be like in the future, a more sustainable city adapted to its climate change challenges.
Noisy and polluting, traffic besets our cities like a plague. What would they look like if bicycles were given the right of way? We met a German designer who dared to dream.
This animation shows what the Holstenplatz in Hamburg would look like if all the cars and traffic signs were gone, making room for trees and grass. It could be a square of paradise for cyclists and pedestrians. But it actually looks like this, much to the displeasure of Hamburg graphic designer Jan Kamensky. He would like to see fundamental changes, which is why he began making animations of how he believes streets should be.
The project got started with the beginning of the COVID pandemic. I looked around and thought, I don't want to just sit and wait for the changes we need. I want to contribute. And as a visual designer, I can change urban spaces.
Jan Kamensky thinks gray streets and dreary squares should be transformed around the world. Or at least in animations to start, like here in New York City. And in Belgium's capital, Brussels. And Germany's capital, Berlin. The graphic designer launched social media accounts under the name Utopia for bicyclists.
We need more space for bikes and more bicycles so that their genius can take effect. Their low emissions take up little space compared to other modes of transportation and can be used for many things.
Jan Kamensky's vision is already reality in Germany's neighbor, the Netherlands. For example, in the country's fourth largest city, Utrecht, where 125,000 people cycle daily, whatever the weather. That's more than a third of the city's population. Chris Bruntlett works for a network that advocates greater use of bicycles. He spends much of his time on the Vredenburg, the most heavily traveled bicycle path in the Netherlands. It used to be a multi-lane road with heavy traffic, like the ones found in all cities.
Unfortunately, a lot of cities, cycling is still just for the fit and the brave and the really risk-tolerant, people that are willing to rub shoulders with motor vehicles, but that's not the vast majority of people that live in that city. They want to be able to tune out and just enjoy their commute, and when you provide safe, separated space for cycling, you're going to attract more of those casual users.
In 2019, the world's biggest parking garage for bicycles opened in Utrecht. Displays tell cyclists if any spaces are free. Up to 12,500 bike riders can park here, right next to the main station. In fact, the country has become known for its bike-friendly and aesthetically pleasing solutions, such as the Daphne-Schippers Bridge, which passes over the roof of a school and connects two neighborhoods.
It's just so much more convenient to travel around the city on a bike. It's so much quicker and more fun.
Hamburg is still far from being a cyclist paradise, but Jan Kamensky hopes to at least bring attention to urban mobility questions.
By pushing forward, I'm creating opportunities for debate. So one way or the other, I'm provoking some kind of rethinking of the issue.
Jan Kamensky hopes his utopias won't remain purely digital, and that not only Hamburg, but metropolises like Paris will become bicycle paradises, much like the ones he designs and animates.
cars completely gone and only bicycles on our streets, I'm not so sure about that turning to reality yet. But it is true that we will need new and innovative ways of thinking to deal with problems of the future, especially with 2 out of every 3 people expected to live in cities by 2050, according to the UN. I'll leave you with that and see you again next week. From all of us in India and Germany, goodbye and thanks for watching.